Okay, everybody's here.
Yep, people are coming in. People are here.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Jeanette Singh uh, at the University of Riverside. This morning, we are happy to have John Mattson here as well, who will be conducting today's webinar with Dr. Singh, and Jag Patel, who is our conference coordinator for University of Riverside. You will be hearing from her shortly. But I wanted to take this moment to, first of all, thank our participants that are joining us from various locations, some here in the US, some from abroad. And so we welcome you all. Also want to take a moment to invite all of you to visit our website, uofriverside.com. That's www.uofriverside.com, and take a look at our conferences. We have a conference calendar section where there is a host of various subjects that you could look into, register. Those are paid sessions, conference sessions in education, business, management, leadership. And so I invite you to please take a look at that. There's a calendar that has dates out until next year as well. We are conducting them both virtually as well as modified in-person attendance, just given our environment as you know, as things are ongoing and changing. We also produce and publish journals. So I invite you to also take a look at that. If some of you are interested in publication of articles, we do have that opportunity in education and management as well. So a few of those items I'd like to invite you to look at. We are here to answer questions for you. Jag has been in communication with all of you, so you have her contact information. If not, if there is someone that does need more additional contact information, we'll be happy to provide that for you too. So I'd like to now pass on the attention and time to Jag.
Good morning, everyone. I'm with University of Riverside, the Global Conferences Coordinator. It's great to see everybody this morning or evening, wherever you are, because I know everybody's from different locations. You have been in contact with myself, and if you would like any more information on what Jeanette has spoken about, our conferences, our journals, please reach out to myself, or of course visit our website at www.uofriverside.com. So the one thing we are asking today is, in order to keep this going, Mr. Mattson will be speaking for approximately 30 minutes. And then after that will be Q&A. So what we'd like for you to do is, as you come up with questions, if you can type them in the chat box as they come up, and then we can get those answered at the end first. And then if there are more questions after that, depending on how much time remains, we can actually answer that as well. So welcome again, and hope to hear from you guys in the future soon. And now I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Raj Singh.
Thank you, Jag. It's my great honor to introduce my friend, John Mattson, to come and teach us and tell us about careers, how to look for good jobs, good careers in this COVID situation. He has a tremendous background. I know him for many years, and he has an enormous background in career management. He is graduate actually from Tufts University, the Fletcher School of Tufts University. Has worked there. He also was at Boston University, Middlebury Institute of International Studies, Wharton School, very prestigious executive MBA program, Actors Guild, Actors Fund of America. And the last work that he did was with the UCR School of Business as a director of career center. And now he has his own consulting company, which is Career Coach Consultants, where he helps people find jobs and have wonderful careers. He has tremendous background. I'll let him tell about himself even more than what I just said briefly, but it's a great honor to introduce my friend, John Mattson, to our webinar today. So welcome everybody. And with that, I'm going to ask John to take it from here. John, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Raj. It's a pleasure. And thank you for all of you who are on the Zoom call today. Are you able to see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great, great. Well, Raj gave me a good introduction, so I don't really have to say much more about myself. I've been doing career counseling and career coaching with people for about 40 years now. I started when I was 5, so, I'm a lot younger than I look. Uh, so it's a pleasure to share a lot of the information that I've picked up in those 40 years with you. And, again, everybody has a different take on things. So I might tell you some information about a resume, and the next career counselor you talk to, they will tell you something different about a resume. So, don't get confused when you listen to people's advice. Take advice that you think is correct and integrate it into your job search. So let me go through these slides fairly quickly so that we can get to Q&A afterwards. The purpose of the presentation today, hopefully you understand a little bit more about the job market, especially during a pandemic. Communicating your value through resumes and cover letters and then ultimately interviews is very important, but I'm going to focus on just the resumes and cover letters today because we only have about a half an hour here. And also creating effective job search strategies during a pandemic. A lot of the things that I'm going to share with you are good job search strategies, even when we're not in a pandemic. But there are some things that you might want to consider a little bit differently during the time that we're currently facing. Here's the job market in California. About 57, in US and California, about 57 million people applied for unemployment since March of this year because of the pandemic. So that's an awful lot of people. That's about 1/5 of the country. So there's a lot of people unemployed right now. Other unemployment is 6.9% right now in October, which is not bad. I thought it would be higher when I looked at these statistics. However, California unemployment is at 11%. When I worked in Los Angeles at the Actors Fund, which is a nonprofit organization in the entertainment field, the unemployment rate for Los Angeles was 13%. So it's not as bad as it was actually during normal times. So that's kind of interesting. So the other thing that you want to keep in mind is that don't let employment statistics discourage you. Unemployment rates are a collective number. It's sort of how many people in an area. Your job search is an individual effort, not a collective one. So all you need is 1 or 2 job offers that you could accept one of those offers. So your job unemployment rate is either 0 or 100%. So hopefully you will find jobs throughout your life fairly easily with some of the suggestions that I give to you today. Again, be confident that you can obtain jobs for which you qualify. A lot of people discourage themselves from applying for jobs because they don't think they'll be able to make the grade and get an interview. So always err on the side of applying for a job and then dealing with the rejection afterwards. Don't reject yourself from opportunities. Employers look for basically 3 things. What's your education level? What's your years of experience? And what are the skill sets that you bring to a particular job? So if you match 70% of the skills that you see listed in an advertisement, I would apply for the job. If you're, saying, gosh, I could really add a lot more value than my 70%, although it's maybe down to 60%, apply anyway. Again, let them reject you. Don't reject yourself. People are, again, hired for their skills. It's very important that you focus in on your skills, but also your interest and excitement of joining a company. And also focus on the value that you can create for the employer. And that's particularly important to talk about the employer in the cover letter, not so much about you, interestingly enough. That's in your resume, but your cover letter should address the employer's needs. And you should, really talk about what you know about the company in your cover letter and how you can help them. 70%, well, what does that 70% mean? 70% of jobs are never advertised online. So that's a critical thing to keep in mind. So how do you find a job? Well, here's a fairly recent, this is in about 6 years ago. How are people finding jobs? And this hasn't changed too much over the years. Typically, direct application to the employer is the best way to apply for jobs. Contacting friends and relatives, this is all about networking. Answering ads that are placed, such as on Monster or other places. And again, always go to the company website. Don't go to Monster and apply for a job that way. Find out what the company is, go to their website. Employment agencies. So if you have a specialty, for example, in finance or accounting or some creative field, there are employment agencies such as Robert Half, Account Temps, Creative Circle, that are good places if you can match the skill sets that their clients are looking for. So that's a very good way to get into a company for a 3-month, a 6-month assignment. And then oftentimes a lot of people are hired on by the employer after a trial period like that. So that's a very good technique to use. Let me talk a little bit about what an acronym is that I created about 20 years ago called CIVIL. And this is a good way to help understand what you have to offer an employer. CIVIL stands for your competencies, your interests, your values, your income needs, and lifestyle preferences. If you can answer these questions for yourself, it's much easier than to make a pitch to employers if you know yourself terribly well. So what are your best skill sets? Write down your top 10. And interests typically lead you to the field that you want to work in. So competencies lead you to the job, but interests lead you to the field and the company you might want to work in. Your values are also important in terms of, matching the employer. Income needs. I tell people have 3 different budgets. What's a budget that you can survive on barely, and what's a middle budget, and then what's a higher end budget, so that you know when the job offer comes in whether you can accept it or not. And then finally, lifestyle preferences. If you are interested in surfing, you've got to be near an ocean. So those kinds of things to consider. Competencies, again, we have a lot of skill sets, and these are some of the major ones that people often have. Interests, again, this is how you find out about what really interests you. And one of the things that I would recommend is go to a big Barnes & Noble bookstore or a big library and walk around and look at all the categories and ask yourself, if you were to leave the bookstore or the library with 10 books or even movies or music or what have you, or magazines, 10 magazines, books, or movies that represent a particular subject area, that is a good clue as to what interests you. And then you start thinking about what kinds of people work in industries that match my interests and what companies are there. So very important that you have an interest in the work that you do. Again, values, different kinds of values. Income needs, here's the 3 different budgets listed here. And there's the tangible rewards and the intangible rewards. So, we work for money and benefits, but we also work for making a difference, making a contribution, helping people, feeling challenged, etc. Again, here's some of the important lifestyle questions. One of the things that happened to me several years ago, my mom was living in Florida, and she said, "Why don't you come and live with me in Florida and take care of me?" I said, "Mom, we'd love to take care of you, but only here if you want to come to California. I'm not moving to Florida. I just moved to California recently." She said, "When can I be there? Can I leave in about 2 weeks?" I said, "Okay." And so we took care of Mom for 6 years. Actually, my wife did. She was a saint taking care of my mother for 6 years until she passed away at 98. She lived an awful long time. Here's a career matrix, and this is a good way to sort of think about your career in general, because your career is going to span 20, 30, 40 years. So what you want to make sure you do is, what track A, B, and C represent industries that you're interested in. So, you know, the vertical columns represent industries. The horizontal columns, horizontal rows, they represent job opportunities that you would have in each of these fields. So I recommend creating a career matrix for yourself and filling it out so you know what would be your next move. If you weren't doing the job you are now, what would you move to? And here are the major global industries that most people work in throughout the world. And, you know, one of the things that I would challenge you to think about is which one of these boxes up here do you think you'd want to work in any of these fields? So if you can choose one of these 6 boxes, that's a great way to focus in on things that you want to target. So that's very, very important. For example, most of my career has been working in nonprofit organizations, universities. So my box would be the social services box, the lower right box. So keep this in mind as you go through trying to focus in on particular industries. Here's a matrix that's filled out, for example. And I've used this with our MBA students. So this is a typical career matrix that maybe our MBA students would use at UCR. And the lower level is where people enter, and the top level here is what you want to aspire to. So this is a great way to look at your career, that if you weren't doing column A at the lower level as a consultant at Accenture, where else would you move on this? And typically over a period of 20, 30 years, you move up this career ladder, so to speak. So this is a very important way to do your career thinking, because, you know, I came up with this when I was at Boston University. A student came in to see me. I said, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to keep my options open. I said, that doesn't help me zero in on helping you to find a job. What do you want to do? Well, I could do a lot of things. I want to keep my options open. So I said to him, I said, what would you want to do most of all right now? Let's say this week you wanted to get into a job. Oh, I'd like to be an accountant. Okay, great. That's one job. But suppose you had 3 different tracks and 3 different kinds of job opportunities. He said, oh, I didn't know I could do that. I said, yeah, think about 3 different tracks and figure out what the focus is on each of these tracks. That way, you don't leave your options open. You are actually focused in your job search. So that's how we came up with this diagram. Let me talk a little bit about resumes and cover letters. Here are the major headings you want to have. You want to have your heading, your name, your telephone number, your LinkedIn profile. How can people get to you? Perhaps your email as well. You don't have to have an address. You could say Los Angeles, but you don't have to have an address. And this is particularly concerning, I think, for women. Because sometimes people get your resume and they might say, well, geez, here's a person I can try to stalk. So it's very unsafe for women in particular to put your address on there. You might say a city, but that's about it. So again, professional skills. The first thing that I like to see on a resume are, what are people's skills? And this changes depending upon what employer you're sending your resume to. So that's the thing that you can change on a resume pretty quickly. What are your top 6 or 9 professional skills? Right at the top of the resume. And then your education, experience, leadership and community engagement, any languages you might speak, technologies, interests. Interests, I like to have people end their resume with, I have an interest in, hang gliding, art, and music. It makes you sound a little bit different than everybody else who is applying for a job as an accountant. Everybody looks the same. Everybody's done the same kind of internships, but sometimes your interests are a good conversation starter, particularly at the interview. Technologies. If you're applying for a technology job, make sure your technologies are really up in your professional skills category so that people right away know that you know C++, you know Excel, you know this, you know that. So that's the only thing that I would change on this is the emphasis under professional skills for, a section on technologies. Some resumes dues, professional email address. Don't have, James Bond 007 at Gmail. Don't have Hello Kitty. Don't have Joe's Bar and Grill at Gmail. Don't have any silly addresses like that. Believe it or not, there's a lot of silly addresses that people have. And one-page format, relevant information only. You may have done a lot of different things in life, and you might have to ask yourself, what does that employer want to see from my resume? If there's things on the resume that aren't relevant to that particular employer, you want to take them off. Easy to read font. For example, Arial and Calibri are the best fonts to be using. Uniform formatting. I just recently got a resume from somebody and my eyes were going all over the place because there was different blocks of different stuff, information all over. I want to just read quickly through a resume. So make it nice and clean. Simple is better. Don't get overly complicated. And include quantifiable things. So if you said, I sold, cell phones, how many cell phones did you sell monthly? And if it's a good figure that looks impressive, include it. So quantify everything that you can possibly quantify on the resume. Those are quite important. Some resumes don't. Again, the unprofessional email address. High school information, only if you don't have any other degree would you put your high school. But if you have an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, then you don't have to go with the high school information unless, for some reason, you're looking for a job in Chino and you went to Chino High School, then put it on because it looks like you're a local person and people like local people, for example. And again, no photo or logo on the resume. Some people include those, so don't include those. Don't be too lengthy on the resume. It's 1 or 2 pages at the most. Don't include personal information. I once bought a book called Resumes That Get Jobs. And I went home to read it, and it was laughable. People on the sample resumes there, they listed health, fair, or arrested asthmatic condition, weight. Under personal, it said, live with mother, have paid all bills. Those are not the types of things that you want to include on a resume. I used to have this book on my coffee table at home, and I wrote on it that don't get people jobs, and then I'd share it with people who would come over to visit me. It was the worst book, and every time I went to a bookstore, I would tell the bookstore manager, take this book off your shelf. It does people a disservice. And again, do not lie or exaggerate. You can selectively edit things and not include something, but don't include something that is not true at all. So very important. Job search letters. Let me talk a little bit about the cover letters and thank you letters and other follow-up letters. Cover letters need to be 1 page only and basically 3 or 4 paragraphs. And what you want to do is talk about why you're interested in the employer and what is the match between you and the employer. That is very, very critical. The thank you letters are important after an interview, for example. And also, you can also do follow-up emails. You don't need to do follow-up letters. And again, a lot of this stuff are emails these days, not necessarily letters. But few people get letters these days. So if you actually do send a letter, you get your name put to the top of the pile because they say, wow, this person took the time to actually write a note to me. So sometimes those are a little bit more effective, surprisingly. Cover letters, make the match. What position are you applying to? What do you know about the company? if a company that you're applying to recently purchased another company in, Brazil, you want to mention that you know that, because that's not necessarily common knowledge. And if they see that you know that the company bought a company in Brazil recently, they're going to say, wow, this person knows a lot about us. And how are you a match for a job? Sometimes you can even put you're looking for somebody who can do X, Y, and Z. I have done X and Y. I'm currently studying a course on Z. So make the match as much as possible. And then the final paragraph is usually, I'd love to chat with you sometime. Is there an opportunity where we can talk? Don't necessarily say, is there an opportunity for an interview? Just say, is there an opportunity to talk? That way you can talk to anybody and maybe not get called in for an interview, but at least you can make an effort to call them to say, is there a time that we can talk? Whether it's online, in person, Zoom calls, that type of thing. Cover letters, make the case why should they hire you? Why you as opposed to anybody else that could be applying? Descriptive words to show that you're a good fit. Again, focus in on those skills. Expand on 3 points from your resume and match the job description. So if you've worked in a particular industry, bring that up. Don't start a cover letter and start saying, well, I worked in this industry, then I went to that industry, now I'm here. Talk about the relevant things. And then how will your experiences and skills enable you to be successful in the firm, in the company? So those are the things about cover letters. Again, finish strong, briefly recap and thank the employer, confidently suggest the reader to consider your resume, and state your actions. So very important. Job search strategies. Let's talk a bit about this. I know I'm running out of time. How do you find a job during a pandemic? Well, there are basically 3 ponds to fish out of for any kind of job in life. A bad job pond, the good job pond, and the really great job pond. And there's very few jobs available in the great job pond, but people do have really great jobs. So you can get those. So I would concentrate on the good and the great job. Do not look at sort of jobs that are really in the 60% pond, unless you're desperate and you say, I need a job, then fine, go to the 60% pond. But otherwise, really focus in on the good and the great job ponds. Strategies for conducting a job search. I have found Indeed.com to be the #1 best website. Other ones are idealist.org for nonprofit organization, government jobs in the federal government, usajobs.gov, and Monster can be helpful as well. Direct application through the company's career site. But you should also send a copy of your resume and cover letter to the VP or the manager of a department in which you want to work, or the manager, the assistant manager, somebody who wants to see your resume, basically. And always let that person know that you've applied online, and then maybe even network with people through LinkedIn who are working at that company to see if you can get some intelligence about the company. You don't want to ask for a job. You can say, I've submitted my resume for a particular position, but I'm really interested in getting more of a flavor for how does the company work? What's it like working there? How do you enjoy it? And so forth. So ask for those kinds of things. Networking. Again, there's professional contacts, that you can use, and there's also the personal contacts. And traveling is a great way. Unfortunately, we're not traveling much these days, but traveling is a great way to meet people because everybody's traveling together and it's easy to strike up a conversation. Family, friends, and neighbors. There was a job I was interested in not too many years ago, and I contacted one of my neighbors, and they knew a person I should send my resume to. So, it's interesting to figure out who your neighbors are. Sometimes you don't even know them. So informational interviews via Zoom. This is opportunity to talk to experts, like Raj or myself, experts in particular fields, and a great way to expand your network. And you can do these on Zoom these days. An informational interview is not a chance for you to ask for a job. That comes later. You know, my son is an entrepreneur, and he told me an interesting thing the other day. He said when he was out raising money, he found out that if he asked people for money to invest in his company, he got advice from them. So instead, he would be asking people their advice, and then they would say, hey, can I invest in your company? So very important not to ask for money or anything. Could be money, could be, you know, anything tangible. Ask for advice from people, and you're more apt to get places by asking people for their advice. Networking informational interviews via Zoom. Again, these are fairly straightforward if you know how to use Zoom. Be professionally dressed on your Zoom call as well. And have an agenda. You are the person leading the interview, so have an agenda. Make sure you've got that. And listen. Very important to listen. Don't do all the talking. And then make sure you send a thank you note asked afterwards. Here's a list of some questions that you might want to ask, and you can come up with your own list of things that you want to know about a particular industry, a particular company, and get feedback that way from people that you talk with. Reasons why people don't get hired. I'm not going to go through these, but you can take a look at them, like arriving late for an interview. I had a very good friend who had a great interview scheduled for an office at Stanford University, and he showed up 20 minutes late because he didn't know where he was going. And that's unforgivable. I told him, I said, you should have gone there the day before to find out exactly what door you need to walk in, and then in the building, what office do you need to go to? He didn't do that research. He got nervous at the end. He was riding around Stanford's big campus, and he had to call them up, said, I'm late, I've gotten lost on campus. He didn't get the job. So anyway, these are important things to not do during interviews or any part of your job search. So thanks so much for listening today, and I'd be happy to handle any kinds of questions.
John, thank you so much. Great information. I hope everyone finds really very useful. With us, we have Professor Tamola Obamui. What time is it in Nigeria? Can you hear me?
You will need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Nigeria is 8:30.
8:30 in the evening?
PM.
Okay. So, I mean,
yeah, 2033.
Thank you so much that you can join us. We're happy to have you and welcome. Do you have any comments or question for Mr. Mattson?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's a wonderful session, and I'm also happy meeting Professor Riverside and the other people, because I've been communicating with Riverside University. I had wanted to come for a conference in May this year, but the COVID-19 was postponed.
Yes.
So I'm happy meeting you now. My
Happy
question
to meet
is,
you too. Welcome. Nice to meet you as well.
Yeah, thank you. I will still visit your university maybe next year.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me quickly ask John Mattson.
Yes.
You talk about job shares and how to meet the employer. You also talk about money. What's the best question or the best answer when you are asked how much you expecting from this job? What is the best answer?
Yeah. The best answer is not to answer the question. That's the very best. You know, basically, if somebody says to you, what are you looking for in terms of salary, you can turn it right around and say, well, since you're familiar with the salary ranges here at the company for different positions, what is the salary range for this position? So you ask them, and if they give it to you and they say, well, you know, we're paying anywhere between 40 and 60,000. You say, well, you know, most of my job search has been looking for companies that are paying 60 to 70,000. So the 60,000 is in my salary range. So you verbalize whatever they say is the top of the range. and so they know, okay, well, he wants 60,000. Now they may say, well, we don't really ever start anybody off at 60. Well, what's the highest you have started anybody at? And if they say 55, say, well, again, because the job is so good and I think my skill sets are a perfect match, I'd be happy to take it for 55. Meanwhile, you may have been happy to take it for 40. So better to throw the question back to them. If they really press you and say, come on, what do you want? What do you want? Then give a salary range. Now, when you give the salary range, it should be about $10,000 more than your research indicates they would probably pay. So let's say you've done some research on this company and the company's range on this is probably 50,000, 40 to 50,000. So what you want to say is 60 to 70,000. Now, when you say 60 to 70,000, they're not going to say, great, we'll pay you 70. They'll know that they can get you for 60. But it's, again, $10,000 more than you think they're going to pay. So make sure that your lowest number is actually your highest number.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, John, for excellent answer. Now, I have a question about the email address. Is this true that it's not a good idea to use old companies like Prodigy and others for having your email address with?
Yes, yeah. For many years I had AOL, and I stuck with it because everybody knew my email. But then I saw everybody going to Gmail, so I abandoned all my AOL accounts and went to Gmail.
Right.
And I think that's probably the safest one to go with these days.
Okay.
My wife likes Yahoo for some reason, but I'm not sure if there's a lot of people on Yahoo. So
Right.
I would use the Gmail email.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, John. Let's see. We have Professor Shah. Professor Shah, do you have any comments or question?
Unmute yourself, Dr. Shah.
Sorry. Yeah, I had a question regarding because everything has become more or less virtual with the pandemic. So can you throw some highlight on the virtual job market? Because I know a lot of youngsters are now getting job online. So some do's and don'ts and, some things that would, help people find jobs online, virtual jobs.
Yes. One of the key things that you can do if you're searching on LinkedIn, you can put the word remote in and then the zip code that you're looking in. And that will pull up any job that says that you can work remotely. So that is a great way to suddenly just focus in on the jobs that you can work remotely. Many jobs that are being hired at, let's say, Occidental Petroleum, which is in Los Angeles, many of these companies are now allowing workers to work from home, but they're not necessarily going to say it in the job description. So you can apply and during the interview process to say, what is your policy during COVID in terms of people working from home? Some companies might say, you have to come into the office 1 day a week. Oh, okay, that's not bad. And that way, if you live a distance out of Los Angeles, for example, you might say, well, I could commute to Los Angeles, 1 hour drive once a week. I don't want to do it daily, but once a week I could do. So that comes into your calculations. The other thing is that, let's suppose that you really, really want to work for a particular company or organization. And you don't see any job advertised for what it is that you do or want. What you might want to do is write to the managing director or the president or manager in the company and make a pitch to work there, to say, I've got this background, I've got that background. I don't see that you have any kind of job advertised, but I would really appreciate it if you could let me know if a job like this would come open in the future. So it's really deciding that you want to work there and going after them. Now, I told one of my clients years ago, I had a private practice called Career Crossroads back in the Boston area when I worked at BU and Tufts University. And I had a client who I suggested they do that. And she wrote to one of the leading scientists. And he was a scientist that created lots of different products. He invented the is it the Segway where you stand on and it rolls with two wheels? Dean Kamen. She wrote to Dean Kamen saying that I have a design background and I know you're working on wheelchairs that have unusual designs and so forth. And he responded to her right away, said, could you please come in contact with me and talk with me? And she went there and during the interview, she said, well, I'm not quite ready to make a move yet. I said, oh, why'd you say that? But she reached out like that and got an opportunity to meet and talk with him. Unfortunately, she was a little afraid that she wasn't quite up to par for the job. So that's why she wanted to take a little time studying for it. Wrong thing to do.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let's see, we have also with us Professor Yusao Andu. Professor, do you have any questions? Oh, do you have another question? Okay, Professor, go ahead. Go ahead. Please go ahead and ask the question. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah, looking at the team managing career during COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah, John, you're looking at it from the employee point of view. If as a person, if I have a career and that I'm already on, I think we can also look at how I can manage this career. For example, if I have a business, that's my career. So during COVID-19, we can also look at how I can manage it without necessarily looking at the employees only. We can also looking at the managers of companies during COVID-19. How do they manage career? Because that they are choosing career. The career is to establish a business, and that's
so. Are you talking about your own business? That you have a business?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can either, depending upon what your business is, you can either be marketing your business to businesses and companies because they need your product or services, or you can either be managing and marketing it to individuals. So a B2B versus a B2C, the consumer. So you have to sort of think about that. And, it's all about marketing and sales, really. And what you want to do is reach out to either, clients or consumers that you think would want your product, or then the businesses that might benefit from using your product or service. So, it really depends upon your individual case, but that's something that you want to sort of put together a strategy on, and then run it by some people. Talk to some of your friends and colleagues and see if that makes sense to them, what your strategy is. And then if it does, then implement that strategy and see what happens.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Aida, you had a question. Your hand is raised. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Actually, this might be a good time for him because he's a student. He's pursuing a degree, I think, in economics or something, postgraduate student. So, yeah, Mr. Audi, do you have any questions?
He's trying. There he is. Okay, now we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, I do. I do have a question, please.
Yeah.
I have a question, please.
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. In one of your tools, why writing a resume, you did say that you should not lie or exaggerate. And in one of the headings, of course, you have to write about your experience. So what if you don't have an experience? So how do you present your case? What if you don't have an experience and you don't want to lie, you don't want to exaggerate? So what do you do?
Well, I think if you don't have any experience, then you have to point to something else.
Can you hear me?
And you have to point to maybe your education and training, or a certificate maybe that you took, or something like that. But it's very, very hard to convince somebody that you should, do a particular job for them if you don't have the experience or the education to do it. So I think what I would do in that case is I would contact, let's say, the president or the manager of a company and say, I found your company on the internet, and it's very, very interesting, and I would love to work there someday, but currently I don't have the right education, or I don't have the right experience that you would probably hire me. What do I need to do? What should I do? So I would contact them and ask them for their advice. And they may say, after talking with you, well, you seem to be a really sincere person and a hard worker. Why don't you come and talk to me, and maybe we could find an entry-level job that you could do, and then we could work on, promoting you in the future. So you never know. Engage in conversations with people. That's the key thing. So that's one thing. The other thing that you can do is really think strategically about what have you done in your life, even if it wasn't a job. But let's say that you are good talking with people and convincing people to do things. Maybe you can come up with some skill sets that you used when you were much younger in convincing people to buy something or do something. And so you can put that in your skill sets at the top of the resume and say, able to convince people to purchase X, Y, and Z, or to do X, Y, and Z. So again, people sometimes forget about experiences they've had even long ago that may be relevant to today in the job that you're interested in. So make sure that you've done an exhaustive search of all the skill sets that you've had, even from high school days and college days, way, way back, and see if you can put those up as skill sets. At least your resume will get reviewed if the skill sets at the top of the resume match the job description. But otherwise, I might ask you the question, well, why do you want to do something that you're not really qualified to do? And so you may need some career counseling to help you to pivot to, a little bit different direction. For example, let me give you an example like this. There's a client who came to my office. This woman was this was back in the 80s, 1980s, and I had a private practice in Connecticut. I used to work at Wesleyan University as the associate director, and then I left and I started my own business. And there was a woman who came to see me. She was probably 45 years old. And I said, what is it that you really, really want to be doing in life? She said, I want to be an astronaut. I said, well, at this point in time, they're not taking people who are over 30, and they're preferring males to be astronauts, which was the case. I don't think there was any woman astronaut until maybe the late 80s or something, or early 90s. So I said, what is it that you like about being an astronaut? Well, it's about space exploration and NASA and so forth. And she was a computer person, computer scientist. I said, well, why don't you move down to Florida and work at NASA as a computer scientist? She said, oh, I never thought about that. I said, that'll get you closer to your passion about the space program. So that's another way to look at things, is what can I do for a company that may not hire me?
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Of course it does. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Great. We got a few more minutes here. Anybody has any other questions for Mr. Mattson?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Metz. Suppose you want to market yourself in the, for a higher position. So is the LinkedIn the best platform in social media, or something else nowadays?
Or a higher position in the company that you're in, or?
Yeah, I'm in UCR, teaching at UCR and La Sierra University.
Yes.
But I know now UCR is doing partnership. They recently partnership with Ripen. It's a consulting firm. So UCR is getting into partnerships with other companies, and so I'm just saying, what's the future for higher education? If you want to do diversify your skill sets and do more
Yeah. Well,
career advancement.
I think what you want to do is contact people within that company
Okay.
to sort of say, gee, what are you folks doing at UCR? I see that you have a partnership there. I did that recently because when I was still working, I retired in July from UCR. But when I was working, I was talking to a company that really provides internship opportunities for students. And after I talked to them for half an hour, they said, boy, you are an expert at this stuff. Would you like to work for us? It's a Canadian company. I said, well, as much as I would love to move to Vancouver, Canada, I don't see myself doing that right now in my retirement days. But had you offered me a job 10 years earlier, I might have thought about it. So sometimes you get into conversations with people and they say, wow, you know a lot about this stuff. Would you ever want to work for us? And I did throw out, though, that I'd be available to work remotely from here if they have any kind of part-time position. I haven't heard back from them. But so that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is find out the person at UCR who set up that relationship with that particular company and find out what's going on. Why did you set that up? What's happening? Is there a point of contact there, that I could contact and reach out to them, because I'm very interested in what's going on. That type of thing. So always try to network within your organization, but also network with that company. And again, LinkedIn is probably the best way to be able to find, manager, of marketing at that kind of company. And that may be the kind of person that you want to talk to. It's usually good that you talk to a people person, and anybody who's in sales or marketing is a very people-oriented person because they're dealing with clients all the time. Calling up the controller of the company may not get you a lot of answers. But, somebody who's in sales and marketing, they love to talk to people, and they're naturally marketers. So they'll tell you all about the company usually. So that's the way to do it, really.
Okay,
Great.
thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay, everyone. I think our time is just about there. So maybe one more question. If anybody has any questions, just one last question, please go ahead and ask, and then we'll wrap up.
I actually have one, but I was gonna let.
Yes, Jack.
Please.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I have a daughter who's, in college, and for her to get to higher education, and this is like something right now what they struggle with because of being remote and distance learning.
Yes.
Where does her resume at this time, or not resume, but like for a pre-application into another school or whatever, how does the volunteering efforts and that play in a role of building your resume?
It depends on what the volunteer effort was, I think. If it's very intriguing and very interesting, I wouldn't say I sold Girl Scout cookies, because a lot of people sell Girl Scout cookies. But if she's doing something very high level or very interesting and intriguing, that would be something to play up on the resume. And you're thinking of her applying to a different college?
Yeah, so like if she were to apply to dental school after this.
Okay. One of my suggestions is that you have her reach out to some of the professors there and talk with the professors. Mm-hmm. And if they get impressed with her, they might say, hey, let me contact admissions. I really enjoyed our conversation. I think you'd make a great dentist. Let me send a note to the admissions office. So that is one way it could happen. My son did that sort of approach. He was on a bus coming from France to England. He was studying at Oxford University at the time. and he got stuck in Europe because of the volcano that was going on in Iceland. So the only way he could get back was to take a ferry boat, but he did not have a car. So they wouldn't allow him on the ferry boat. So he saw a tour bus in line. So he went up to the tour bus bus driver, said, "Can I buy a ticket on your bus because I need to get back to Oxford? And they won't let me on the ferry without an automobile or a bus." And the guy said, "Come on in, and you don't have to pay me." So he sits down next to, coincidentally, an Oxford professor. And they talk, and they talk, and they talk. By the time they got to England, the professor said, "Look, if you want a recommendation from me to join the PhD program, I'll write that for you." And that helped him get into the PhD program at Oxford.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
but, my son has an unusual ability to get people to give him lots of money and also do things for him like you wouldn't believe. I mean, he's the luckiest person I have ever met in my life. I mean, he was in the White House as an intern. He was Hillary Clinton's intern on Capitol Hill. He interned at the Treasury Department. He interned at Harvard Medical School. He has no interest in medicine.
John, he learned from the best.
Well, yeah, he may. Yeah, I guess the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, huh? So.
Well, John, thank you so much. Thank you, John. This is just a wonderful experience for me, and I hope it's for all our participants. I want to thank Professor Bui, Mr. Andrew, Professor Shah, and Jack. Thank you for coordinating this. This is just wonderful. And Gina, thanks. So I want to thank everybody, and most importantly, thank our speaker here, Mr. Mattson. He shared a tremendous experience of many, many years from top institutions in the United States. I mean, Wharton and all these wonderful places I have been to. Every time I talk to him, I always learn something new. So, John, thank you so much.
Lucky.
Yeah, this is just wonderful. Thank you so much.
This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, John.
Good luck
Thank
to
you, John.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks everybody. And we'll post a video. So everybody will have a video to listen to afterwards if you want to. So don't worry about it. We'll make sure you have a video of our conversation today. So thanks to everybody. And Jack,
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we expect the video.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night in Nigeria. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.